Howdy folks. Today let's talk about the Subtonic Storm. This is a IEM made in Singapore. It costs $7,460. It actually started out at about $5,000, but things have changed in the last couple of years. This IEM has 9 drivers. It has 7 balanced armatures and 2 electrostatics. All these drivers are Sonion drivers. They have 2 Sonion balanced armatures for bass, 5 drivers for mids and treble, and 2 Sonion second-gen electrostatics for ultra treble. According to Subtonic, they use mostly vented balanced armature drivers for deeper tonality. So typical balanced armatures from Knowles going into the past, they're not vented, right? And I have some in my hand here. You can kind of look at them. So there are these. And this is the venerable, I think it's a 229955 or something close to that. That's their Knowles big bass balanced armature. So that's one. And then we have 4 Knowles balanced armatures right here. Now, the interesting thing is that's 5 drivers, right? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are dual balanced armatures with a little 1 nozzle per 2, right? So this is 5. Just kind of hold that there. All right. So if you look at this IEM here, sorry, you could tell that, well, you know, if there's even 9 drivers, and including the Sonion electrostatic transformer, there's still a lot of space in these shells. And in fact, most of the shell is actually full of electronics, the 7-way crossover. So let's talk about that real quick. So this is a true 7-way complex crossover with all mid-range drivers being bandpassed, and that's according to Subtonic themselves. So the general arrangement is, you know, the subwoofer, the woofer, the mid-range, the mid-tweeter, the high tweeter, and the super tweeter all have their own parts of the crossover, right? Other fun facts is this is well known to be a sealed IEM, and it's non-vented. And the idea with that is that you would get good isolation if you needed to use it, let's say, doing live sound, or you needed isolation. But they did use vented Sonion balanced armatures, almost all of them, allowing some pressure relief. So when I stuck these in my ears, I kind of was like, I got a pressure buildup. Sorry, let me get my hand out of the way. Got a pressure buildup, but after like 10 seconds, it seemed to just kind of dissipate and go away. And it's like, that's interesting. I mean, I don't see any vents on this, and it's not vented. So they are using mostly vented balanced armatures, mostly, right? And so that means that air pressure can go in the nozzle through the balanced armature and into the shell. And it's possible that like little micro gaps in the 2-pin right there, perhaps, could also come out of the back plate. But basically, I'm trying to say that I don't really get a pressure buildup on these, which some of my other IEMs, like the RSV, that's totally sealed. Those do get a very bad pressure buildup, so I have to use foam tips. But anyway, it doesn't actually happen with the Storm, which is nice. I am surprised slightly about that, but that's really, really nice. So anyways, moving on, right? So the way that they tuned this IEM is with phase-shifted drivers, okay? So they're using fast balance armatures for clarity, microdynamics, quick response, and apparently only 1 minor damper used somewhere, I'm not sure. So most of the drivers are basically completely undampened in the way that they're actually tuning it. And by the way, you can see the graph up here right on top of the screen. Sorry. That's on my coupler. You can see you know, okay, we have 1 balanced armature peaking here. They probably added another one right after it and with a reversed phase, so it's sucking out some energy that would have peaked way up here. And then we have another balanced armature here, and then another one reverse phased here, and one here, and reverse phase here. Then we have this really interesting, super big 8K notch. Now, I didn't quite hit the 8K because I was looking at other graphs, and everyone seemed to kind of get it just a little before that. So I was just, you know, trying to match other graphs more or less. But very interesting. So this is definitely a reverse phase driver here doing a very large 8K reverse peak. And so what that does is theoretically When you put IEMs in your ears, sound waves bounce back and forth in your ear canal, and one of the major quarter wave peaks that happens, it's a buildup basically, a resonance, is at 8K. So this IEM uses this special out of phase balanced armature to remove that 8K peak, which essentially fools the brain into thinking that perhaps your ears are not occluded and sealed. It's very, very cool technology. I'm super psyched with that particular part of this. So I just thought I'd explain that. Moving on, we have a split balanced armature, one for sub bass and one for mid bass. The sub bass balanced armature is vented, so Sonion vented balanced armatures, and then the mid bass one is non-vented, so they probably just plugged it, or it could be a different model entirely, for bounce, snap, and impact. And then, of course, the sub bass one is for extension, decay, and rumble, right? Very cool. According to Subtonic, it achieves higher impact tactility than conventional dual balanced armature woofers. I mean, I can't disagree. It sounds absolutely phenomenal in the bass. I asked Subtonic if this was like an acoustic chamber design or a mostly tubed design was what they said. Very cool. They are in fact using automotive grade, I don't know about automotive grade, but like, high quality military perhaps grade inductors, capacitors, and resistors that contain very low internal resistance called ESR. So that means they're using the highest quality components possible. They're generally larger, which is why the shells are much larger than normal. Here's a funny thing. Here, I'll just show you this. This is, sorry, I have to wrap my hands around this. It's a little hard. But you got, Jesus, hold on. Anomaly versus storm. I think it's hilarious. One balanced armature, one dynamic driver versus 9. But anyways, it's a funny comparison. So anyway, filled with mostly, I would say, the crossover and a few in the drivers, few 9, which is quite a lot of drivers actually. But anyway, let's move on. So the build of these is made from grade 5 titanium, and you might go, what the hell is that? Well, I didn't know either. So apparently it's 90% titanium, 6% aluminum, and 4% vanadium, which causes the shell to be a higher strength to weight ratio, much stronger than pure titanium. It's like, okay, sounds good. Excellent corrosion resistance, very good. Comparable to pure titanium, highly resistant to seawater, chemicals, oxidizing acids, and chlorides, which I would imagine includes ear cheese and grease. So that's probably good. It's a low density type of metal, so it's like 40 to 50% lighter than steel. Excellent, because if this was a steel shell, it'd be really, really too heavy. As it is, it's already a chunker. High fatigue resistance and biocompatibility, which is also nice, although they're putting some type of coating on these guys, right? It's I didn't really flesh that out. It's somewhere, but it's got a coating, so it's not pure titanium on the ears, on the skin. And the usages for this grade 5 titanium is in aerospace, airframes, engine components, medical implants, devices, automotive parts, and such. And these IEMs weigh just about almost 11 grams per side, 10.3 grams. So they're chonkers, not the heaviest things I've ever had, but they're chonkers. All right, let's move on. Power usage and sensitivity. So this is like it's kind of a stickler point, we'll call it, for these IEMs. If you read through forums and such, people go on and on and on about how you need to have the most powerful amp ever created in existence of mankind. I don't really, no, it's not. So these are rated at 6 ohm impedance, and sensitivity is 103 decibels per volt RMS, right, per 1 volt RMS. So I crunched some numbers. That doesn't mean a whole lot to most people. So to hit 103 decibels per VRMS figure, the source must deliver about 164 milliwatts into 6 ohms, which is a big demand on both voltage and current for most like portable devices, let's say. 164 milliamp RMS is not trivial at all. You will not find many dongles that can produce that amount of power, but plenty of desktop amps, although not everything. On the other hand, though, 103 decibels is going to blow your eardrums completely out, so we don't really necessarily need that amount. I kind of figured out, let's say I want to go like really loud, so 90 decibels, A-weighted. So that's human ear weighting rather than linear weighting. So that would require about 26 to 30 millivolts milliwatts RMS of power. And I did a little math about my little, I have a Radson ES100 portable amp. I use it constantly in balance mode, and came up with it can do about 100 milliwatts into 6 ohms on the balanced outputs. And so, yeah, I can get Storm plenty loud. Now, speaking about this in particular, I talked to the Storm boys, and I asked, because like there's this effect going on, right? As I pumped the volume on these guys, I kept noticing over and over again that like it felt like it got up to a certain volume, and then it didn't necessarily get louder, but it seemed like it got a little compressed. So it's you'd have to experience that in real life, maybe loud sound or something. But so it seemed like it started compressing, and I'm like, huh. Normal amplifiers don't compress, they clip, especially the little portable ones like that. So I was like, well, maybe the crossover does some type of dynamic compression. So I asked the boys, and they said, in fact, yes. If it starts being limited by current, it's going to not clip, it's going to compress. So I actually like that feature a lot. Clipping sucks. Compression is kind of a nice thing if you like that effect. So anyways, so then the question becomes, well, does Storm scale with other sources, say like a bigger source, better source? And of course it does, right? Better sources, better mojo, better everything. But but compared to other IEMs, this seems to scale less intensely, let's say, depending on the amp you feed it. And this has a good linear impedance circuit, which prevents output impedance changes from really changing the frequency response, which is not to say that it won't sound different, just the raw frequency response should not change. Let's say let's say a tube amp of, let's say, 4 to 8 ohms versus your average dongle or something that's, very low impedance of 0.5 ohm, let's say. Just to mention that. So it shouldn't change frequency response, but other attributes to the sound may change. So anyways, better amps and sources, of course, help. I do enjoy the ES100 on these quite a lot. Sounds great. It just is what it is. Subtonic does state most amplifiers will preserve the frequency response, but exceptions are if your amp has an output impedance of over 100 ohms, then some minute high frequency response changes may happen. Let's not worry about that. If you spent $5,000 to $7,000 on your IEMs, you're spending a good amount on your amplifiers. That shouldn't matter. So yeah, Storm will only start doing dynamic compression if the amplifier is unable to deliver enough current to a 6 ohm load. I did detect this when testing amps. I don't mind it, blah, blah, blah. Okay, just talked about that. Let's move on to the fit and the finish. So I consider this a sort of professional, classy look, right? There's no stupid waifus on this. There's no anime characters. You could put these in and wear them and not look like an idiot. They're large notwithstanding, but they're fine. They fit me fine. They do stick out. They're not super contoured. Maybe the next iteration a little more contoured if they could. That'd be nice, but they're not bad. They don't poke any parts of my ears. They don't hurt, nothing like that. Just large. They just stick out. And because they're large and they weigh a bit, I can't use them running, which is fine. Maybe they're not a running type of set. And I do like the Storm faceplate quite a lot. I think it's tasteful, and I tried making some faceplates for my own IEM, and it turns out that you can't do certain things. But this is tasteful and aesthetically pleasing for me, and I like the color combination and such. All right, so let's move on to the sound signature. Let's get into the sound. Just a moment. Had to get a drink of water. Sound signature. We're going to call this a neutral reference with bass boost. It has flat mid-mids. It has low ear gain of approximately, we can check that right here, so just under 8 decibels. And this is like a tiny peak, so we'll kind of just go by this. I hate this. So if we measure that, we're going to have like something like this, about 6.5-ish decibels. That's what I consider of ear gain, and so that's lowish, and I call it correct, actually. If I listen to speakers in a room, and I've tested this over and over again, somewhere in this range, 6 to 7 decibels is just about what I hear. I don't know. I don't exactly know where Etymotic came up with the whole 15 decibel thing. I mean, I think it's in an anechoic room, but it doesn't apply to this type of stuff, these type of IEM. So I find that this amount of ear gain is just about perfect. And in fact, when I tune my own stuff, it's right in this range as well. So very nice. Slightly pushed treble. And the only reason I say that is I tested enough tracks, metal, and a bunch of other stuff. And in some cases, the treble popped out a little more than I was hoping, but it was fine. It was good, just slightly. A little bit extra on top there. It does have extended treble without fatigue, which is very nice. Whatever they did to this graph up here, dipping out certain parts, it does really well for my ears, and I don't find anything fatiguing or sharp or piercy or anything like that. And for sure, high resolution, that is due to the damperless design, and they actually sound very lush. So I suppose, I don't know, maybe that's the sub bass combined with the nicely extended treble. I just find the word lush applies to them quite well. Moving on to the X Factor. I know everybody likes to hear about my opinions about X Factor, and I think if you have an IEM, and especially an expensive one, and it ain't got X Factor and quite a bit of it, you've already lost the plot, man. So yeah, this has X Factor. It has 3D out-of-the-head staging for many tracks, and it's very, very nice. Not quite as good as the best, but it's very, very good. And for the amount of details and the overall frequency response, it's quite amazing that they were able to pull off that sort of out-of-the-head thing, for the amount of detail, I would say, and extension. It has visceral imaging. You can almost reach out and touch a sound in 3D space. And that kind of combines with the layering. It almost is like each layer of sound is very distinct, and you can kind of like pay attention to each layer individually, and they don't like mesh together. That's kind of like how I would describe that. The other thing is it has a diffuse and wide tonality. Many IEMs have a very it's hard to put this into words, but much less like speakers. It's like more in your head, more compact, the more center focused. This is extremely not like that. It's very, very diffuse and wide. And my own IEM lays into the diffuse and wideness like it's life dependent on it. Anyways, so that's the X Factor. And then, combined with that, it's very speaker-like. Not exactly, but that's combine all those things together, and this is kind of an out of the head amazing experience. Call it that. Something like speakers, not exactly. So other things, let's see, I'm getting lost here. Fun facts. Yeah, let's go to the fun facts. So this was just some stuff I read on Subtonic's blog. So these face plates were a pain in the ass to make, apparently. 1 out of 3 worked, and then they had to hand paint this and such. They had to bake them in an oven. Yeah, sorry. And apparently it was just a huge pain in the butt. And so I think that for the version 2, they probably did something slightly different to make that easier process. And I looked at version 2. I think I prefer these, but whatever. So it's a pain. And also, so then the original pairs are going to be worth more because of the extra work and detail stuff that they had to put into this to make it work. There were 2 variants, Launch Edition V1 and V2. So that's, like I said, that's just distinguished by the back plate and sort of how deep these contours are on it. So V2, this is V1, has a greater contrast. I like V1 fine. Let's see. So a fun fact also, the sharp 8K dip in measurements is unusual and a deliberate phase cancellation effect to prevent quarter wave resonances from causing the classic 8K peak, which would sound less like a closed-in occluded sound. I've already talked about that, but it works. And so this evolved from an earlier prototype called TRKR. It's like Taranku's something reference, curve something reference. It was multi-driver experiment, got overly complicated, and then was extremely not insensitive, so it required some kind of amp that most people couldn't use, and so they scrapped that design, and Storm was created from that project. And that project took a whole year of development, and so they scrapped that. That's amazing. And Subtonic actually intentionally avoided sending review units, loaners, or basically they did not rely on YouTube reviews and shills. They just had people talk about it word of mouth and a little bit of forum exposure, and that's how they sold them, which is interesting. I appreciate that. Less hype, more IEM. And here's some prototypes that I happened to pull up. We got like they had an aluminum one, and then raw titanium, and then some like bad angled nozzles and so on and so forth. So yeah, kind of interesting. So let's move on to the sound stage right here. And this is probably one of the more important points, at least from my perspective, on what an IEM can do. So imaging, 9.5 out of 10. It's slightly diffuse, but pinpoint positioning. It's my favorite, man. Amazing. Layering, 9.5 out of 10. Each sound layer can be heard distinctly individually, and you can pay attention to it and pick out any kind of nuances. Fantastic. So 9.5 out of 10 layering. Wideness, 9.5 out of 10. Yeah, you see how this is going. It is not a 10 out of 10 because it actually has some depth, and there's a lot of IEMs out there that just go super wide and have no depth, and maybe a little wider than this, but this is much better in my opinion. So 9.5 out of 10. Depth will give a 9 out of 10. Excellent strong feeling of sounds being closer or further away from myself. I don't know what a 10 out of 10 would be off the top of my head, but it's good. So soundstage is rocking it on these. The way this is laying out sucks, but anyway. 3D is a 9 out of 10. So a 10 out of 10 I would consider to be something like maybe the Softer's Twilight or an EJ07, where like sounds just seem to come from absolutely nowhere, and it's almost like magic. So it doesn't necessarily do that, let's say. But it does have a large scale sound. It's much bigger than your normal IEM, and I really, really appreciate that. That is probably due to some acoustics and a lot of the tuning, to be honest with you. Volume scaling is going to be a 9 out of 10. It's extremely impressive for this amount of detail and just everything they did with this, balanced armatures, electrostatics, and then also volume scaling. Whoa, man, that has to be a lot of the crossover circuit, I think. Probably some tuning. Yeah, if I hear some kind of electronic crossover compression, probably just my amps. It may not happen in better stuff. I do have good amps, though, so there. And it does have an out of the head speaker-like thing going on. And I already talked about that. So very, very impressive for a non-sealed IEM, or non-vented, fully sealed IEM. All right. I think, well, let's just keep going. Why not? We're at 23 minutes. Okay, let's just talk about some stuff, right? So this is just the strict frequency response, how my impressions are of how things land. Bass, so we have the slam woofers. They are tight, resonant, huge sounding. Balanced armature, really don't care. They're very incredible. The sound sub-hits seem like they sound slightly behind my head and slightly below me. And that's exactly how anomaly hits me, which is odd, let's say. I don't understand that fully. So I was comparing that stuff in my head. Subs are super textured, so as you would expect, we got the dual balanced armatures, one vented, one sealed. It's about as good as you can get for balanced armatures. That's about all I can say with that. It has an actually strong stereo separation of bass notes, so that would be more like stereo subwoofers. It is sub-bass focused. It is sub-bass focused. But it has a flat mid-range and low ear gains. So basically you can hear plenty of mid-bass, although I wouldn't say that it has a lot of it. It has some. It's fine. It doesn't feel like it's sucked out. It has an almost bone-conducting type effect. So like when sub-blasts hit, it almost feels like there's a vibration thing going on. Probably it's psychoacoustic, but it's pretty impressive for balanced armatures especially. Also, I would say it doesn't have too much or too little bass. It's sort of Goldilocks zone type thing. And the low ear gain means you can actually hear the low mids and the high bass, and that's really nice. Moving on to mids. We're going to call them relaxed and natural and slightly warm. So they do have a meta-ish thing going on, and I don't think that meta was even out when they did these IEMs. So we'll call that between 1 and 3K. So on the graph that's here. Why it does that. So it's about from here to here. And because it's got like a small scoop there, and it doesn't peak until like pretty much after 3K, that's quite meta-ish, before meta even existed. But we do call the mids detailed and textured. They're very nice in terms of that, and so that has to be the damperless arrangement and the phase canceled tuning nature of the mid-range. Very nice. It's accurate in terms of speakers in a room, I would say, with minimal coloration. Has a great center focus, but not too much. It's more than like speakers than IEMs, which is that sort of between the eyes inside of your head thing. It doesn't have that. It's more like out in front of you. Very nice. Flat mid-mids and high mids have a low ear gain around 6 to 7 decibels, which is my favorite, basically. Vocals are very clear, both male and female, and male vocals have nice chest to them. Female vocals have a nice sparkle to them. It's very nice. Very nice balance between the two, I would say. Vocals tend to be pushed back slightly. I just mean that like if you had 10 decibels of ear gain, it would be probably a little bit more in your face, whereas this is 7, so a little less. And acoustic instruments in terms of the mids are just like fantastic. Really, really nice. Just they breathe and they, just very realistic. In treble, we're going to give a 9 out of 10. And so I had to think about this quite a lot. So if I had to think about it, I would say that I prefer, let's say, the Mystic 8 treble. Now, a lot of this is the tuning, though, so I don't know for sure if you could just toss Mystic 8 treble tuning on this and have it sound right. But I just think that the Mystic 8 had more of a shimmery kind of supernatural treble to it, whereas this is a little bit less incisive, let's say. It's not like it's not incisive, but it doesn't have too strong of a bite to the notes. Treble, I would say, is pushed slightly above natural, just slightly. Air over 10K is a little extra over natural, so it has some shimmers, but it has less shimmers than a Mystic 8. That's kind of where I was going with that. The jagged treble graph, which some people shit their pants about, so that's between here and here. Let's see if I can do that, here and here. But a lot of people thought that was going to be like peaky and shitty sounding, and I don't know what my opinion was back in the day, probably before I knew anything about anything, but no, it sounds smooth and very nice and lush. So none of that is happening. I would say that okay, I'm trying to put this into words, but because every dip in this is going to be a driver that's out of phase, I hear it's like a little bit of, God, I'm trying to put this into words. It's not hazy. It's almost like you put a Dolby effect on the treble, like a little phasey. I have a very hard time describing this, but I hear a little bit of phasiness out of it. And on drivers that don't have this, I don't really hear that at all, let's say. So yeah, maybe there is something to like, I don't know, if you are used to phase differences, like I've been tuning Anomaly forever, right? This guy, and I'm working with phase wackiness to give an out of the head experience to Anomaly. So I'm used to sort of phase wackiness and how it affects, and so I hear a little bit of that in the treble. I don't know if I ever read anybody else commenting on that, but I just thought I would go off on that a bit. Anyway, so that's, the jagged graph. It doesn't sound like jagged treble. Hi-hats are not pushed too high, which is nice. That is a stickler point for me on many, many, many other IEMs. You want to get your details, and then, a hi-hat hits, and it's like, Jesus, too much. It's no good. But that's not happening on this, so that's very nice. It has almost 0 BA timbre, and yeah, I mean, it definitely has electrostatics above 10K. This is probably, I don't know, okay, the RSV would be a little bit less of a BA timbre than this, whereas this has less BA timbre than something like the Yin Canon Pro, just for an example. So, I don't know, take that for what you will. So above 10K is more of a bite than a shimmer, I think, on Storm. That's my impression of that. It has a little bit of shimmers, though. Okay, so let's move on to music replay. I'll kind of go quickly with this because this is very subjective, for sure. Blues, 8 out of 10. Stevie Ray Vaughan was really awesome. Ry Cooder, awesome. I was thinking maybe a little bit less sub bass, a little more mid bass for blues in general, but 8 out of 10, excellent. Classical, 8.5 out of 10. Most part excellent. Extra subs gave a little extra thickness sometimes that I didn't think was maybe necessary. Mid-range instruments, though, were very, very large sounding and realistic and huge. So awesome. And more than most normal IEMs for sure. That has to be due to this large amount of flat mid-range right around this area, right over here. Yeah. So classical is excellent, 8.5 out of 10. Also, reverb tails from the venues on live recordings tailed out like a little bit, let's say, extra compared to normal, but I found it very nice and musical and fun. This is hard to read on this way this is doing this. All right, classical. So disco, 8 out of 10. Disco doesn't really do subs, it's never had subs, or extended treble doesn't really help that much. So some tracks got a little splashy, but the mids were really, really fantastic. You could sing along to a lot of the vocal stuff, the harmonies and everything. So yeah, 8 out of 10, excellent. Electronica, 10 out of 10, just stunning. Like, the stage effects, the bass, the separation, the texturing, just phenomenal. 10 out of 10. I'd listen to EDM anytime. Jazz, 9.5 out of 10. The sax, the horns, upright bass all sounded pretty much perfect for me. Treble tuning did not break the kind of like smoky atmosphere that jazz needs, so it didn't have too much. And excellent reverb tails, so like a venue, you could kind of hear the sound splashing off the walls, and it didn't sound abnormal, so I like that. And then we're going to move on to probably the worst point of this IEM, which is still not that bad, which is metal. And metal is fine, and there were plenty of tracks that I found I could listen to just fine. But as metal goes, you end up turning it up. And as soon as I turned it up, I wanted more mid-bass, just did. Guitars were a little bit high bias, so like the high part of the grind was a little bit too high, and a little bit of the low mids were sucked out just a hair, and I'm very hyper picky. I play guitar, so I would not say you would buy Storm for your metal set of the year for sure. It does it fine, probably, but if that's your focus, look somewhere else, probably. R&B, 9 out of 10. Vocals, bass hits were all fantastic. Percussions, amazing. I'm guessing maybe like some folks for rap would want more bass, probably, maybe a little more mid-bass perhaps. I'm not a rap guy, so I actually found most of my R&B, well, pretty much all of it, just amazing. So 9 out of 10. Reggae, 9.5 out of 10. So a couple of cymbals. Now look, reggae, a lot of the stuff I have was mixed and mastered like in the 70s and 80s. Basically, right, their speakers sucked. They needed to pump the treble up a little higher, so you'll find a track here and there that was just like, whoa, cymbals a little hot. But like well-mixed modern music didn't ever do that, so cool. Bass and vocals were super good. In fact, vocals were just like some of the better ones I've heard for reggae. So we're going to give reggae a 9.5 out of 10. I rock it out anytime. Rock will be an 8 out of 10. The only problems with rock, a little bit of edge on the guitar notes. I didn't really want that, but vocals were amazing. So like, I don't know, like Journey, right? Singing along to Journey, Lights. Fantastic. Just killed it. Soundtracks, 10 out of 10. Perfect epic scale. Like it just, the mojo, the epicness was all there. Deep, wide, bombastic, blah, blah. Just amazing. And Vaporwave was like, geez, man, the stage effects, the reverbs and the mixing and all the fun stuff. Like I literally sat there for an hour and just kind of like flipped around to tracks and tried to find stuff that was fun and, trying to find some Easter eggs and stuff. It's 10 out of 10. Fantastic. And Vintage and Lounge, 10 out of 10. Perfect combo. Everything was amazing on that. Buena Vista Social Club, like the vocals. Jeez. Okay. So that's our music replay. Let's go to our conclusion here. I got a few things to say. All right. So yeah, I'm not aware of any other IEM that uses phase cancellation to tune the frequency response. That should, in theory, mean max theoretical resolution. No dampers between drivers and eardrum. It is what it is. Still, this style of phase cancel tuning is more like live sound used in concerts than IEMs. And so I do have to give it up to the Subtonic guys for taking on such a difficult idea, concept, and seeing it through to completion and actually having it sound great. People, if you're interested in this type of tuning, go look up Dave Rat on YouTube. He's under Rat Sound, or maybe just Dave Rat. But he has a video about doing the subwoofer configuration for a stadium for Bass Nectar. And go through that video, you can kind of see how he's tuning the bass using phase cancellation to basically not blow the performers out on stage while producing a bass wave that hits, the ends of the stadium. It's really, really interesting. So yeah, Storm does a lot of that in the IEM. Downsides, we have to talk about a few. Yep, it's big, it's heavy. The occlusion effect is real, so I can hear my breathing, let's say, and my heart beating. Turn up the music enough and it doesn't happen, but it's an effect that I don't particularly like, so that would make it even harder to use for activities. It plays all of my library well, which is amazing, and that's why it's getting a recommendation. Some of it extremely well. It volume scales like I want, which is why I like it as much as I do. Find a track you like, crank it, you get the goods, and it doesn't hurt, and it doesn't get peaky. The bass is really, really, really good. I love the flat mids. Too many IEMs have sucked out mids and high ear gain and treble, and this doesn't do that. And I honestly, I was quite surprised when I got it. I did not realize that they were going to tune more, I would call it Western tuning, than chi-fi. So I was pretty impressed with that, and I'm still impressed. And the stage is actually good enough to make me happy, and I'm extremely picky about stage, especially making an IEM for 2 years, which is like, stage is the number one thing, right? And so because I can hear stage and focus on it more than normal, I can hear a little bit of the phase trickery. It's not off-putting, but it's detectable if you pay attention and you're used to how that sounds. Tuning is more like a neutral studio monitor than I expected, for sure. It has low ear gain, flat mids, non-hyped treble, a little bit of extra treble, but not hyped. Fun bass. And actually, you could use this as a studio monitor or live sound if you really wanted to do that. It would work, I think. You'd have accurate sound. So yeah, in a perfect world, I'd be rich and just buy one of these right off. But priorities are different for me right now. It does get a recommendation. Is the price too high? It is. Is it worth it? I can't answer for you at all. But I've spent 2 years trying to make my own one driver IEM. So I value the work and time that people put in, the research and development, more than other folks. A lot of people sort of look at the component prices and the raw driver configuration and just go like, that's what it's worth. And to me, it's worth a lot more. People's time and effort is actually worth money. Like a company like KZ puts out 100 IEMs a year and spends almost no money in R&D, and they just poop out IEMs all year long. They make money off it. They probably make more than Storm ever will, which is something. And you get a ton of cheap drivers and a cheap plastic shell. Better companies, I think, definitely spend a year, if not years, developing technologies, and then they have to recoup that in terms of the prices. So the prices are high, right? Elysian, 64 audio, soft ear, Subtonic, etc. There's more. So maybe that helps frame the price, $7,000 plus, in a way that makes it more palatable. I don't know, but maybe. I do kind of hope that Subtonic makes some more cheaper IEMs with the same style of tuning. I don't know if they could, but maybe use some Belsings. Haha, just kidding, don't do that. But yeah, I do love this IEM. I guess it might be more surprising if I hated it or something, given all the rave reviews on the internet. And I would say that it's probably a high watermark for the IEM industry in terms of the technology that they implemented. And yeah. So get your ears a listen on one of these if you can, and if you're rich, pick one up. You'll probably like it. And yeah, man, rooting for you, Paul, and rest in peace, KD, and Tony Tex. Get a bunch of love, man. Stay strong. Right on, and I will talk to you later.